Good evening, everyone. I believe we have, in fact, gone live. We are in Lesson 12, Chapter 13 of the book of Revelation. Now, let me turn on my clicker here. There we go. And, of course, just a super fast review. Revelation. Why was it written? Who was it written to? Written to the seven churches in Asia. It was written to give them hope and help them to stay faithful, reassuring to them that, yes, you're going through persecution, but it will all be worth it, and God is still in control. Tons and tons of imagery. Now, went through 47 slides last week alone, and, we're trying to balance how deep we get into particular subjects. And what certain imagery is regarding certain figures and so forth. And last week, the question came up about the number 1260. And that number itself is, point blank, it refers to a time period. It's not actually 42 months. It's referred to in the book of Revelation as 1,260 days. It's also referred to twice as 42 months. And it's also once as 3.5 years times and half a time. But they're all suggesting a period of time of the same length of 1,260 days. But that's not a literal 1,260 days. It depends on the time period. It's referring to a designated time period, such as in chapter 11, verse 2, it says the Gentiles, actually that would be the Gentiles, are said to tread over the holy city for 42 months. In 11:3, it says the two witnesses, God's people, are said to testify for 1,260 days. In 12:6, a woman precious to God is nourished and protected from Satan for 1,260 days. And in 12:14, it says God nourishes the woman for a time, times, and a half a time to protect her from Satan. Then in 13:7, it says the beast will make war with the saints for 42 months. Those are all different ways of saying the same thing, which is this is going to happen for a time period. Period. It's not a count them out days. But one thing that all of those have in common, though, it's what do all those time periods have in common? It's all activity mentioned is always an attack on what God considers precious, particularly His saints. In 2 of the events, Satan is said to be the attacker, and in 3, the beast is the attacker. So basically, 1,260, the reference to that would be a time of persecution of God's people, and in particular, an attack directed by, or specifically by, or directed by Satan. Again, we know certain things from the past. Like for instance, the Roman Empire did persecute Christians from around 90 A.D. to 300 A.D. But there are other time periods that are shorter or closer to it, like when they destroyed Jerusalem, and there in 70 A.D. But again, what does this all come back to? What does this all come back to? There's a tremendous amount of figurative speech and imagery in the book of Revelation. We cannot get so fixated on what does the 1,260 exactly mean, or as we're going to talk about tonight, I want to know exactly who this beast is and that beast is. Well, if we get so fixated on that, and use our thoughts of what those imagery is talking about, and use those sort of things to separate ourselves from other Christians or to argue about and stuff like that. We're missing the whole point of the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation was written to persecuted Christians, which we're not as persecuted as they were, but the message itself is still relevant to us today, and that is that, yeah, we're going to go through hard times. But if we stay faithful, we will in fact be rewarded. And that's what God was trying to get across to the persecuted people being persecuted through John, is to, hey, I've got it under control. Relax. Just stay faithful. So, as we start to look in chapter 13, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. There's a few correlations between this and Daniel chapter 7. In Daniel chapter 7, the fourth part of the statue there, of course, is the Roman Empire. But and there's a lot of history we can go back and look at and show that. But again, I'm trying to keep this up at a level of point. It doesn't take us years to go through the single book of Revelation, which is perfect and which is great if that's what you strive to do. There's nothing wrong with that. I decided as we went through this to keep it as a little bit higher thing. So let's look at chapter 13 in the book of Revelation. It starts out, it says the dragon, we're told this is in 12:9. It says, the dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and each had a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast its power and his throne and great authority. One of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshiped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast, and they also worshiped the beast and asked, who is like this beast? Who can wage war against it? The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, and to exercise its authority for 42 months. 42 months. 1,260 days, right? It opens its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. I failed to mention this as we started this chapter here. Remember, we just closed the last chapter where the heavenly battle had happened and Satan was kicked out of heaven and fell to earth. And now he's here on earth. Now is what's going on. So remember, that was just going on. Satan was just kicked out and went to earth. And we pick up in verse 8 and says, all inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life. So basically what that's saying is everyone on earth will worship the beast except those people whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life. The Lamb who was slain for the creation of the world, from the creation of the world. Whoever has ears, let them hear. If anyone is going... I'm sorry, I told you before we got started, my mind was running really fast. I keep skipping words here. I'm sorry. Verse 10 again, it says, if anyone is to go into captivity they will go. If anyone is to be killed with the sword they will be killed. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. Boy, look at 10 there. Man, what a verse. Basically God says, whoever has ears, listen to this. If anyone's to go into captivity, that's what's going to happen. If anyone's going to be killed with a sword, that's what's going to happen. It's saying he's in control. And then it says this calls for patience, endurance. Well, actually, excuse me. This calls for patient endurance and faithfulness on the part of God's people. Again, a statement. God's in control. He knows what's going on. Stay faithful. Okay, beast 1. This is the first beast. People are like, oh, who is the first beast? Understandably, people want to understand. People want to know. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. Once we look here and at beast 2, we can see that beast 1 is represented as a physical power on earth. A government, basically. Most commentators believe it's referring to the Roman Empire. That is a good possibility. Does it matter if it's the Roman Empire or not? That does not change the message of the book of Revelation, which we've just talked about. Now, there is a correlation with the Roman Empire and one of the heads having what appeared to be a fatal wound. Remember, it said appeared to be a fatal wound, not a fatal wound, but appeared to be a fatal wound because it was, in fact, healed from that. And, we know from history that in the mid-5th century, the Roman Empire was about gone. It was reduced by the barbarian hordes to a small territory around the capital. It was nothing compared to what it was. But it rebounded. And many people point to that and point to the fact that part of the reason it rebounded, they claim, is due to the establishment of the Christian influence in the empire, specifically the papal influence, the influence of the Pope. Even though it was as corrupt as it was, it still wielded a large amount of influence on the empire. However, again, not everyone came under their influence. As we know, there's always been a remnant. There always will be a remnant of God's church. So, that is one reason a lot of people point towards Rome along with other things. I'm not saying that it isn't. There's a very good argument for the fact that it may be, and all of this is dealing with Rome. My argument is, no matter if it is or isn't, it doesn't change the message of the book and what we need to learn from it. So, now we move to the beast from the earth, which is more symbolic of a spiritual battle. The first beast out of the sea was an earthly battle. This is more of a symbolic battle of spirituality. And so we look then, starting in verse 11, it says, "Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb." You noticed I underlined that. Like a lamb. "But it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. And it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Because of the signs it was given power to perform on behalf of the first beast, it deceived the inhabitants of the earth. It ordered them to set up an image in honor of the beast who was wounded by the sword and yet lived. The second beast was given more power. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. The number is 666. Okay, obviously, I bet every one of you have heard the number of the beast, 666. Oh, wait a minute. I thought that was Satan's number, 666. No, it's the beast, the first beast, not Satan. It's 666 is not Satan, it's the beast that he controls. Okay, who is it? Well, we can stop and take a look at some thoughts that people have put a lot of thought into. Some want to say, oh, it's the Antichrist. No. Some very popular one is Nero, the Emperor Nero, especially people who believe this is all relating to the Roman Empire. Latinus. That's another one. The papal liturgy, if you will. Latinos is Greek for the Latin man, which comes out of supposedly pointing towards Rome and pointing towards the Pope. Now, what is interesting is people have been able to say Nero Caesar, the word Nero Caesar, and Latinos, Lateinos. If you look at different things and you jumble the numbers around, the Roman numerals around, you can come up with 666 when you add up all of the numbers for both Nero Caesar and for Latinos. Okay, great. Does that change the message of the book of Revelation? We know it doesn't change the message of the book of Revelation. So, this is where we have to be careful. I told y'all the story about my mom laughing at me when I bought that silly book about Mikhail Gorbachev being the Antichrist. We have to be careful about running down rabbit holes that mean nothing at all to our salvation and to our eternity. What means something to our salvation is that we heed the message of the book. People will be persecuted, but we need to stay faithful. As long as we stay faithful, we will be rewarded. Yep. All right, chapter 14. Now, see, we saw the beasts. Satan was cast down to earth. One beast, two beasts. Now, chapter 14, we're introduced to the Lamb and the 144,000. Chapter 14, verse 1 tells us, Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb. You notice I underlined that because beginning of 13, it said, looked like or resembled the Lamb. Here it is the Lamb. We notice from 13, a lot of people are going to be deceived, thinking that this first beast was the Lamb, but here we're saying, Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their forehead. So in chapter 13, we have the beasts, evil. We have in chapter 14, we have the righteous. In chapter 13, we have the quote-unquote mark of the beast, 666. And then here in chapter 14, we have the Lamb's name, Jesus, of course, and God the Father's name on their forehead. Now, who here has, I neglected to ask this question just a moment ago, but who here has heard things about, oh, well, that's the mark of the beast? Who's here have heard different things about that's the mark of the beast? Believe it or not, I mean, there's some really warped things out there. You can go look, and there are people used to, a long time ago, which is sad, hopefully no one today, but they would say people that have black skin, that's the mark of the beast. Well, that's crazy. Come on. And then there's people that, now are saying, oh, credit is the mark of the beast. They've talked about having little chips installed, in the back of your hand or something, so they can, if you get in an accident, the paramedics can just beep, read it, and they have a complete medical history. Oh, that's the mark of the beast. Again and again and again, there's people that try to come up with stuff. That's where we got to be careful. That's where we got to be careful. All right, moving on. And it said, in verse 2 says, "And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of rushing waters and a loud peal of thunder. The sound I heard was like that of a harpist playing their harpists, multiple, playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. No one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth." Okay, we covered 144,000 one time before, several chapters back. Well, this is a reminder. There's several viewpoints. Some, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, think there's only going to be 144,000 literal people in heaven. Well, if that's the case, we're out of luck, I'm sure. Number of people, but that's not the case. There's some that claim, it's the 12,000 from the 12 tribes are the only people going to get into heaven. Well, that's not the case, because we know there's going to be Gentiles in heaven. The other is, of course, it represents the people of God, the 12 tribes of Israel in the Old Testament, represents the leadership of the new covenant, the 12 apostles. So you have 12 times 12, which is 144, times 1,000, which represents a vast multitude or a military unit, often used in Hebrew to signify a large, complete quantity. So 12 times 12 times 1,000. What does this mean? It means don't worry about 144,000. Really. That's really what it means. But people do get tied up on this. People really do get tied up on this. God's got it under control. We just need to stay faithful. Now, what's this song? If we go back and look at this, and then I heard a sound from heaven and a roar rushing. The sound I heard was like that of harpists. They sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and elders. No one could learn the song except the people that had been redeemed from the earth. So what is this song? What's the song of redemption is what most people claim. It's the people that are saved. We already determined who these are, the people that are singing, and they're singing a song of redemption. And the other people that, sadly are bound for hell are unable to sing it. Why? Because they haven't been redeemed. They are going to hell. And at this point, they know it. Verse 4, let's finish verse 4 and verse 5 here, then we'll call it quits for tonight. And it says, "These are those," talking about the redeemed, "who did not defile themselves with women, for they remained virgins. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They were purchased from among mankind and offered as first fruits to God and the Lamb. No lie was found in their mouths. They are blameless. Okay. Ruh-roh. For anybody that's ever been married, right? No. That's not what they're not talking about physical sexual virgins here on earth, people that died that way. That's not what they're talking about. Remember, there's a physical and a spiritual. Other words, who is found clean? Who is found righteous? Those that have been redeemed, washed clean by the blood of Jesus Christ. They are pure. If we have been saved and we have been washed clean in the blood of Jesus Christ, we are in fact spiritually pure. That's what it's talking about. See, if we fail to remember there are both a physical and a spiritual battle going on here, see how easy it is for people to get sidetracked? I mean, really? Okay. I'm going to wait right there. We'll pick up in verse 6 next week when we start talking about the three angels. We don't have enough time to get through that portion tonight. But what we've set up here is the beginning of the physical and spiritual battle is what has been set up here. A physical battle on earth and a spiritual battle going on as well. So, with that, thank you for joining us. I know there's a lot going on. Have questions, shoot us a message. We do appreciate it, and we do love you, and we will talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.